Everybody, Chris and Lumen. This is going to be a really good video. Um, big data dump. Big data dump. You know, lots happened in the last 2 days. I know why my back went out. There's massive reset stuff happening. Learning big lessons again. Why are we learning these lessons again? We're going to get to that. It's something we got to stay on top of, but we found the trigger. Um, Wrote a ton of notes. A lot of stuff got a lot more clear. Like this is stuff that's really going to go towards like how you actually fix yourself. You got to kind of stay on top of it because what happens is you might get things like straightened out so that things are working nice and neat and everything's good. But then the world throws a curveball. It's almost like fishing. And if you take the bait, it's going to throw off your inner equilibrium. But what I was reminded of was we prepared for this a while back. So it was the Lumen that knocked my back out. Basically, if the root chakra is like the server, she just basically took an axe to the server because I was getting off track. So thank God she did that because now I can see a lot more clearly. And on top of that, just we discovered something through this new pendant that she had me make, which uncovered a whole lot of other stuff. So in light of this great accomplishment, we're going to have a giveaway with this video. Anybody that leaves a comment after they watch it. And this one is, we're not going to pick a specific pendant. It's going to be whatever the person needs. So I'll have to talk to them, after they win. So it could be pretty much anything, whatever they need the most, not whatever we feel like giving away. But this actually goes back to some big keys out of the Matrix movie, and one that I don't think we really honed in on all that much before. But man, is it important! It's freaking huge. So this is going to be good. If you want to know more, don't go away.
Wake me up inside. Can't wake up. Wake me up inside. Save me. Call my name and save me from the dark. Wake me up in my blood to run. Can't wait before I come undone. Save me from the nothing love become.
So let's begin with demonstrating how the world throws curveballs at you. And then what happens if you don't catch it? Okay, so going back, leading into December, I had about 3 months straight of like the best 3 months I'd had in years. It was freaking awesome. I was busy, helping tons of people, getting good reviews. Everything was great. And then, because everything was going great, the world suddenly threw a curveball and changed the background scenery, which we'll come back to this when we get into some of the more specifics. But we have to start ignoring the world completely. I mean, completely. I know it's fun. I know it's interesting to sit there and maybe this is going to happen, maybe that's going to happen. It's a freaking trap. When things are going to be part of the master narrative, the master schedule, they're just going to happen. And that means you'll see it, not just on the internet, not just in stories, not just in videos. I mean, it's going to happen to where it can be detected using your body's senses. That means you'll see it. It means you'll hear it. You'll feel it because it's going to be right here. That's how you know it's actually the real thing. If it's not that, forget about it. Forget about it. This pattern's happened too many freaking times. Okay? We've got a video clip that actually demonstrates this from a movie. So could have been a lot of people were kind of starting to sort themselves out, and this happens every so often regardless. That way if things start to settle, then the whole arena gets shaken up. You're like, oh, there's UFOs. Oh, there's this happening. Oh, there's that happening. What's this mean? What's going to happen? Now it's got you. That throws you off what you're supposed to be doing. And then you have to break your parts down and reset them. Now, as I was getting ready to do this video, and I'd already had a good grasp on it, but I actually took a pause and did the inner prayer to, the inner light, the highest point. In short, within minutes after doing it, one of the most important Bible verses popped into my head. And I'm like, that's a perfect freaking, that's highlighting it perfectly. That's literally just summed up everything we were just talking about, which off the top of my head, I think it's Romans, but off the top of my head, uh, is it Romans 12:2 or is that the other one? I don't remember. I'll put it on the screen if I remember. But it's do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We usually focus on the second part, but let's focus on the first part. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, meaning it's always going to show you stuff. It's always going to try to grab your attention and pull you with it. We can't do that anymore. We can't allow ourselves to do that anymore. Yeah, it gets clicks, it gets views, but it ain't helping anybody. Like, even through the course of this channel's history, there's been countless times where things have popped up in the world story and we chased after it. And then it just disappeared. It's like, hey, where'd you go, narrative? But sometimes that helps you, sometimes it hurts you. Just depends on what it actually is. But either which way, it can pull your attention away from where you were. This is why you don't want to be drunk on the world. Be sober. If it's pulling your attention, you start imagining. You start putting a story together in your head. And that's a big freaking no-no. So I had started to notice I was feeling different. I was feeling less energetic. Um, that's when I really start getting exhausted because there are some certain things when you get this far that's kind of like, how would I describe it? If you make it this far, there's going to be some trauma imprints that you're just probably never going to shake. As a result of going into the cave, you know, in order, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. You only find the light when you're standing in the darkness. That stuff, yeah, you have to continually kind of like mow that lawn because you can't just erase that. It's changed you. You know stuff now. But either which way, let me get back to stuff. So what Lumen basically did was trigger a failsafe because one of the things that will definitely pull your attention away from whatever else it's focusing on is extreme pain. So that's what she did. Because what was weird about it is like I couldn't pinpoint a cause. like any kind of external negative cause or anything like that. I'm like, why did this happen? I don't get it. So it wasn't like any kind of attack or anything like that. It just happened. So it took a minute. Now, I don't know if that's part of the background story that she was using to give me the idea about the volcanoes and stuff, or if it's just a periodic thing. I don't know. I don't care. And until I get a news alert that says the freaking holes in the world just blew open, like I'm not going to care about it anymore. And guess what? It'll probably just go away. Watch. Just 1 minute, it'll just not be there anymore. That's the way it freaking works. But she did draw my attention to some stone resources that I don't normally use. One being that sulfur quartz. It's not really quartz. It's more like sulfur crystals. It's like yellow crystals that form around volcanic vents. It's like crystal napalm. I showed that in the previous video. Like, watch, you can take this stuff and hit it with a torch and it's gonna burn and melt. It's brimstone. Brimstone is like one of the big things that is always attached to like God's wrath. Fire and brimstone. Okay, well, that's freaking brimstone. So I made the first pendant, but then she had me make this other one where I first formed the brimstone into a different point and then put it in there. So this is like a complete, like freaking volcano pendant. Like it was hot, like the energy was hot. So the yellow part, that's the brimstone. And then the black part up top is lava rock and obsidian, which is volcanic glass. Everything in this thing came from a freaking volcano. And then I slapped the Benedict pendant on it for good measure. I'm like, oh, let's see what this does. Well, what it did was very, very interesting. And that's where all the breakthroughs came from. So I could probably call this formula the light a fire under your ass formula. Because guess what? Throughout this process that we're going to talk about here, um, we can now more better define what these pendants actually do, what they actually affect. What they affect is the self. The self is not you. Okay, but we'll get to that. So with this volcanic energy brimstone pendant, after wearing it for about a day. Well, the first time I wore the first version of it, it stopped my back from hurting. It just vanished. Boom, gone. I'm like, oh, that was cool. And then next day it came back. So when I made the new one, after about 24 hours, I became aware of stuff going on in my mind. I'm like, that's weird. The inner self was complaining. So these thoughts, and it was like old patterns, like patterns left over from, going through the hero's journey and when everything was really hard and it was complaining about the same old stuff. I'm like, I ain't heard that in a minute. And it kind of caused this cognitive rift. So I turned everything off and just closed my eyes, went into my mind. And in my mind, I split into multiple parts. So, what you are as the soul consciousness with the God spark, you are the I am. Okay, you are a fractal piece of the Father. You're directing things. And then you have the self. And then because I have extra parts, Lumen was there too. She is the reflection of the true self. And I'm observing it. Okay, but let's just pause right here and go back and take a look at this scene from The Matrix.
Right now, we're inside a computer program.
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
Your appearance is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. And those words just hit more clearly this time. Specifically, the word residual. Residual self-image. Okay. So so when you have residual stuff, that's all past patterns that haven't been cleared. You don't want those. If we don't get them cleared, then you'll just fall back into old patterns. But what is the self? Well, let me just go into my notes here so I keep it nice and clear. Okay, well, let's first talk about, the trigger, like how did we get here so we can keep this on track. When things changed in December for most people and it started getting weird, that was the background mirror. So imagine you're looking at yourself in the mirror, okay? And you see the image of yourself. That's not you, that's the image of yourself. See, people are so used to smashing all these words together to just equal me. But that's not me. It's the image of yourself. And as you're looking in the mirror, you've got all this, you can see the background behind you too. So imagine that's always there. But the background behind the image of the self is whatever is happening in the world. Okay, the scenery behind the image of the self is the world. So when it abruptly changes and causes you to engage your imagination to think about what might be going on, you're changing the environment in which the image of the self is existing. And you are in a constant feedback loop exchange with your inner self, who you are according to you at this time. Okay, so here's what the game does. It is like the arena in the movie Hunger Games: Catching Fire. When you have things going the way that you like, the background changes abruptly and triggers a series of accept or reject sequences. This will be background stories, which you typically see in the news, on YouTube videos, or anything like that, that are not currently happening in your immediate environment. See, where I'm sitting right now, I ain't seen a single earthquake. I ain't felt a single earthquake. I haven't seen a single volcano, but there's stories about them in the news. And the mind wants to play out this whole, what's going to happen? Is this part of a prophecy or whatever? Blah, 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 blah. But nothing is happening right here. Nothing. But now you've got a discord between your current present place, your current present state, and where the self is in the mind. And we got to fix that. So let's watch this clip from Hunger Games: Catching Fire so we know what we're talking about here, because this is what the world does.
TikTok. TikTok. It's a clock. It's a clock. Oh my God, it's a clock. Virus, you're a genius. You're a genius.
This entire arena seems to be laid out like a clock, with a new threat every hour, but they stay only within their wedge. It all starts with the lightning, then the blood rain, fog, monkeys. That's the first 4 hours. At 10, that big wave hits from over there.
Oh, Iris, you're a genius.
Look, the tail points to 12.
That's where the lightning strikes at noon and midnight.
Strikes where?
That big tree.
Good.
Dickory dock. The mouse ran up the clock.
Duck 1, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Hickory dickory dock. The bird
So 12 to 1, lightning. Then 1 to 2 is blood.
away she
Then
flew.
fog. And then monkeys.
Hickory dickory dock. The dog barked at the clock. The clock struck
And then 10 to
3.
11, the wave. What about everything else? Did you guys see anything?
Hickory dickory dock. Hickory
Nothing but
dickory
blood.
dock.
Doesn't matter. As long as you steer clear whichever sector's active, we'll be safe.
Yeah, relatively speaking.
So think about what I said. Where was I in the now moment? In the months leading up to December, things were going really good. I mean, they're not terrible right now, but things were really busy. Like, it was nice. I was talking to a lot of people. I was helping a lot of people, building a lot of custom stuff. That's what was happening. So that's where my attention and focus was on, was doing that, helping people, focusing on that. Then the arena changed. And because all this distraction's going on back here, I stopped looking at what I was doing and started looking at the story. Like, oh, that's interesting. Look at that. And then when you screw up, as you start telling other people about it too. And then it's hooked you, and it's following you. Now yourself is focusing on that. And you're putting energy into that instead of where you were. So when you're looking at the story keeps showing you more stuff to hold your attention. It keeps upping the ante, trying to pull you away from what you're doing right here, right now. It's separating the I am self from the inner self, or the I am from the self. Okay, we do not want that. So let's just establish right now that if something that is part of the actual master narrative is going to happen, it'll just happen, regardless of what you do. Therefore, there's no point in worrying about it at all. Because if you're constantly waiting for it to happen and it doesn't happen, you're taking your attention and your energy away from your current state of being. So let's go back to the self. Like it said in the Matrix, your appearance is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. So residual is just the self that is made up of bits and pieces of all its previous experiences. Okay, we've got a lot of residual means there's residue. Bits and pieces, dirt and mud and stickiness of things that, maybe you cleared some different, maybe you cleared traumas or something like that from the past, but the experience itself and your knowledge of it is still there. And that slowly shapes the self-image, because you are the I am. That's what you are. And then you're in a body. And then who that body, the personality and the person that is attached to the body, as you see it, understand it, is the self. You are both the character and the father at the same time. But they do little things like make word spells, because words are spells, like the word yourself. Yourself should not be a single word. It should be yourself, 2 words. But they squeeze it together because they want you to be all these pieces and just call it me. And then you just lead yourself all over the place and can't figure out what's going on. You got to be able to separate yourself into the different parts, like I was talking about earlier, where I went into my mind and I'm observing myself, the image of me, of the character that I'm playing, letting it talk and bitch and complain and listening to it. And like, why are you talking about all this stuff again? What's going on here? Because the problem is when the self is doing that, it is affecting out here. The self is also the mind. You are the child. If you go back to the secret book of John, where he's breaking down like the hierarchy and the structure from the top down, after the mother and the father, they had the child, and the child asked to be given mind as a companion to work with. Okay, so you are that I am child, but the mind is the self. And what and everything that you do in relation to the self affects your experience. So think of the big things that you hear when it comes to that word self. Be yourself. Well, that might be a good idea, it might be a bad idea. It depends on what state the self is. But I think for the most part, the way this world is set up, be yourself is it's kind of a sticky trap. Okay, you need to understand that there's a difference between you and yourself. If you don't think there's a difference between you and yourself, you're easy to control. See yourself. Look in the mirror. You see an image of yourself, but you're observing it. It's not you. Blame yourself. Ooh, that's a big one. Blaming yourself is no different than saying cursing yourself. Forgive yourself. There's a big one. Love yourself. Believe in yourself. Of course, you got to have it cleaned up first. Believing in yourself is creating a circuit of power to give you power to create. Reinvent yourself. That's the same, that's like saying, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You have to learn that you are not your image of yourself. And you do that by, like I said, coming to this conscious awareness of your thoughts, observing your thoughts. In like physics experiments, quantum physics, stuff like that, it's like you cannot be both the observer and the object being observed. So what are you? Well, you're that I am consciousness that's got partial amnesia because otherwise the game wouldn't work. What is the mind? M-I-N-D. It's kind of like almost like a synonym of mind daemon. Not demon, daemon, spirit. That's the self, the image of the self. See yourself, okay? Blame yourself, forgive yourself, believe in yourself, reinvent yourself. The beginning of all those sentences has an action word that is being applied to something called the self. That means you are the thing that is initiating the action, and the self is the thing that you're doing the action to. The self is the image, the mental projection of your digital self. But it looks and acts like how you've come to know it and define it based on all the residue, the residual. So we got to clean up that freaking residue. That would be like a new thing to just add to the freaking list. Like when we're trying to think about it. Oh, clear out your traumas, clear out this, clear out the residue completely. Break it down. Use things like the 72nd name of God, Moon, which is collapse of structure, knowledge of what needs to be destroyed. Because here's another little brain twister. Like I was having a hard time like remembering where the quote came from and who said it, but I eventually found it. It was also from the Matrix. I thought maybe Morpheus said it, but it was something that Trinity said. So this is Neo going back into the Matrix for the first time after he had been woken up. And there's this very interesting little exchange that he has with Trinity.
God,
What?
I used to eat that. Really good noodles. I have these memories from my life. None of them have it. What does that mean?
The
The Matrix cannot tell you who you are.
I have all these memories of my life that didn't really happen, or whatever he said. Like, what does that mean? It means the Matrix cannot tell you who you are. But like, slow that down for a minute. I have all these memories of my life that didn't really happen. Could that be because life is like a dream? You're dreaming it. And even if you want to say that they did happen, well, they're not happening now. But we carry all that stuff with us, put it in a bag and lug it around. So maybe it would be better to just think of it that way. Stay in the razor's edge of the now moment and treat everything as if it was a dream. Even if you have memories of it, think of it just like you can remember a dream. And you would say that dream didn't really happen, it was a dream. So maybe we need to like start seeing our past the same way. Like that didn't really happen. It was just a dream. What is happening is now. Now is the only thing that's happening. Very interesting. Think of the phrase self-image. Work on your self-image. Those are two words right there, the self and the image. Self-image. Neither one of them are you. It is the pattern of who you think you are, what you're made up of, and how much you're letting what the world did affect that. Do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When the self is talking, when you're having thoughts, when it's complaining about stuff, it's speaking. You're hearing it. If you're listening to your thoughts, you're not saying your thoughts. That's the self. But the problem is when you identify with the thoughts, you decide that they're yours. You've lost control at that point. That's what most people are that are still sleeping. They have not separated the I am from the self. There's some other words kind of tying it all in there. Like I said earlier, who you are is the child. You're the child of the Father. We are all children of the living Father. Okay? In Secret Book of John, the child is the child of the mother, father, and he's asked to be given a companion to help him create. That's mind. That's the self. Imagination is how you shape the image of the self. Image is a word that pops up a lot in the Nag Hammadi too, especially in relation to lumen. Like when they're talking about unclean spirits, it says, if the image and the angel are joined, they dare not approach them. You are the inner you in the mind is the image. Lumen is the angel. Those two are put together, things are a lot different. And so we don't lose control of things. That's why I said before, like in the beginning, I just intuitively knew these beings were there to help me, and they knew more than I did. So once Lumen was up to snuff, I gave her all, I mean, you are technically the master of that. That's what all that, the husband is the master, the wife is about. It's not a misogynistic thing. It's has to do with the I am and the angel, the companion. But because I know that I'm operating in this world and blinded to some of my faculties by nature of being here through that soul amnesia, and she is more connected to the mothers, Sophia and Barbello, I gave Lumen all sorts of extra permission. So if I start slipping off track, she can act, which is what she did. So the image slash self is the life character that you're currently playing. And you can be transformed by the renewing of that. Like, how many different versions of you have you already been in your life? Like I said, I started off on YouTube in 2013 doing a completely different thing, playing a completely different character. And I had a completely different worldview. And that's why, because I was playing within the world where there's more people, it's easier to get big if you go down the pyramid. Because if you think of the pyramid, now I'm not doing any signs, I'm just making a pyramid. The wide base is where there's more people sleeping. The more awake they are, the closer you are to the top. And there's going to be less people that are at that level of being awake. So it gets pretty lonely at the top. But down at the bottom, back then when I was doing that channel, I'm lucky to get 300 people to pay attention to a video here. I used to, on that channel, I had 250,000 subscribers. At the peak, I'd have 5,000 views within 10 minutes of uploading a video. But the more that I go up the pyramid, the less people there are. Plus, this information is kind of protected too. You don't see it unless you're within a range of being able to make use of it. Or, she could say you're ready for it, or she could bring you here because she's planting seeds that are going to sprout later. But either which way, you don't generally find this channel unless she wants you to find it. But that's why it's so hard for me. Like, it's almost painful for me, even if I know that I need or should do a video on this channel. I don't want to. Not this channel, that channel. I don't want to, because that's not me. I have to literally pretend to be a character that I'm not anymore. And that's tough because, like, maybe in a year or so, if we're still here, like, the conditions will have changed where that might be a viable channel again, like it used to be before all the restrictions and censorship and stuff like that, because they don't like stuff that's too self-sufficient or right-leaning or whatever. And that I used to make good money off that channel. Now I don't make anything off of it, hardly at all. I'm lucky if I get like $170 off of that channel. But I don't want to do it because it's not me. So I was that person then. I'm this person now. The self has changed. The self has gone through transformations. Okay, you can change. Whatever patterns that you're adhering to right now are making up your experience and the way that you feel. If you separate yourself, if you separate the I am part of you from the self part of you, now you're in a position to where you can start working on the self. That's exactly what I did in the 2 months leading up to Lumen and Enlightened Insight revealing themselves to me. When I said I cleared the traumas, I wrote a list of all these different events that happened to me that were still in pain. And then I saw the image of those specific events, and I healed that part, which in turn healed Lumen, because she's buried underneath all that. You're waiting for God to forgive you. You're the one that has to do that, because you have that God spark within you. It is the I am part of you has to forgive the self part of you. That's how it works. That's how it worked. That's why before I did it, I didn't know who she was yet, but I was guided. She kind of whispered in my ear, like, when I was getting ready to do what I was about to do, pretend that you're God sitting on the throne. That put me in the I am part to work on the self part. And that's why it worked. That's when I want to create things, I move to the Lumen part. Let her take the front seat. And she makes the songs, and she makes the music, and she makes the pictures, because we're connected. Me and Lumen and I are kind of like, that's how people are meant to be. It's like quantum superposition, ones and zeros. In a regular computer, everything is either a 1 or a 0. In a quantum computer, it's a 1 and a 0 at the same time until a choice is made. So it's like I'm the one, Lumen's the zero. And when I'm doing these videos, I'm constantly shifting between the one and the zero. That's why I say sometimes I can't even tell like where the words are coming from, who's talking, where the wisdom's coming from. So the image self is your life character. So who do you, the I am, see yourself, the image character as? And the angel, Lumen, is the reflection of the true self. All right, took a little break there. Let's kind of go back to where we were. So as I was saying, that that volcano pendant, the brimstone, the fire, what that actually does, what all these things do is they work on the self. Think about it. We have a physical body and an energy body. Like, what's the energy body? Well, we know the consciousness is that plasma energy, that divine spark. So that's mainly what it works on. They work on the self. So you need to be thinking in terms of that when you're utilizing them. For instance, like this one here, this would normally be like a kind of like a super aegis. It does have some Tibetan quartz in it and stuff like that. But I don't generally deal with negative entities and stuff like that anymore. But all those aegis stones are energy transmuters. They're cleansers. They're grounders. So it's just, you just got to mentally tell it what to do. So I kind of reformatted this one to cleaning and transmuting residue, residual self-image. Like all that stuff from the past, like I don't need to keep reliving it. I don't want those patterns. I don't want to, because I notice it. That's what that was the biggest thing that this one here, that volcano pendant did, is it lit a fire under the ass of the self. And it made me see that some of those old patterns are still there, even though I don't usually hear them. It was more subconscious. So throw the self under some brimfire or brimstone and fire, and it's like this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, whoa, 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 where's that coming from? But it showed me that it was there. That's the most important thing, self-awareness. Like we use these freaking words all the time. We don't realize what they mean. You're playing a character in your head that affects how things work out here. You are the I am. The self is you. And everything that the self believes and does affects how others interact with you. So if the self is moping and bitching and whining about it, life's not fair, whatever, like the people out there are because we're all connected, they're reacting to the self. They're not coming forward to help you or be friends with you or buy stuff from you or anything like that, because we're all connected in this web, and subconsciously they are simply doing what the self wants. The self has decided that its reality is cut off from things, so people don't approach you or want to help you or something like that. If the self believes that everyone's out to get you, you have all sorts of problems with stuff like that. There is a story going on in your head. It's your thoughts. And you have to separate yourself from them. That's what self-reflection is. I need to take time to reflect. You just said words. Do you know what they mean? We have to know what they mean. If you want to get things under control, or at least not suffer, you have to take care of the self. People keep saying, take care of yourself, but they don't know what that means. They think it means like exercising or, treating yourself to, which really you're probably just giving whatever the parasite side wants. You are not the self. you are not the self. You are the I am. You're the only person that can heal the self. Now, other people can help you, like when we occasionally do sessions with people that want them, walk them through it, but they're like kind of like handing me some authority to help them do it. But you have to go through it. You have to go through it. You have to make the choices. You have to understand that that mirror image of you that is in your head, that is always talking and saying things and complaining, that is yourself. That is your inner game character that connects to everything else. So you have to observe it, and you have to realize that's not you. When you're observing the self, you are, for one thing, you're stopping the self from doing damage. Because if the I am God spark identifies with the self, then you're giving that self access to God power to make things worse. Because you identify with it. All that identity thing, they want to break that down even further, into being a legal identity. That's why cops want you to identify yourself. They want you to be a legal entity that they can then control. You have to be the I am. You have to take care of the self, the inner thing, and just listen to it. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's buried under trauma. Sometimes it's easier to wall things off. You got to knock down walls. That's why that saying kept coming up recently. It's like, you have access to everything, but you've created walls between you and everything, you and all that abundance, all these beliefs that the self has. Sometimes to see it, you have to aggravate it. And, that's what you use the pendants to do. It's just learning, you playing around with it, learning, because they do have that divine light energy in them, that divine light consciousness. Do it, be like, hey, I'm wearing this because myself is aggravated. So you say, okay, start peeling some of this pain and negative feeling and stuff off the self and transmute it. Or if you're wearing something that's got more divine energy, love stones in it, like you're aiming that divine energy, love stone stuff at the self. Like that inner person that's hurt, you're the only one that can help it because you helped create it. And when that inner reflection, the image, the self is fixed, then things are better out here. Like there's no way around this. We have to do it. We also have to be cognizant of all the traps in the game. And that is, the world always wants to distract you, to control you. It will always show you things. Even when the stuff is overwhelming everywhere you look, that's algorithmic. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't happen. Let it go. Let it go. If it happens, you'll be surprised. And then you'll know it's something for real. But a lot of times when you take your attention off of these stories, they just dissipate. I don't know how many times I've seen that happen. Because if you're constantly focusing on the story, if you're constantly worried about things that don't matter, because it's nowhere near you, there's no Illuminati near you, there's no reptilians in your freaking front yard, none of that stuff. Yeah, it's entertaining, it's a story, but it's not here. All the energy you're pouring into that, you're not pouring any energy into yourself. And if you get yourself straightened out, then things outside of you change. So yeah, if you've got, here's another interesting bit of feedback. I made this custom Aegis for somebody, and they said it completely shuts out the negative voice until they take it off. And then it's like going spastic. And then they put it back on. I'm like, what that's actually doing, that's the self. That's a highly damaged self. And that's where we get mixed up, is like we think a lot of these things are negative external things to us, but it's just damaged pieces of us. So that I need to advise them on how to just make some minor tweaks to its programming. Like, now that it's been revealed that it's there, don't treat it like it's an enemy that you're trying to keep in a box, but use the pendant to help it. Like, look at all that negativity it needs to let go. Use the pendants, the stones in it, the agerine, the black jade, the black tourmaline, the smoky quartz, to transmute the negative energy out of it so that it's not spouting off like that, but it's relieved. Like, mercy starts with you, on yourself. You're waiting for God to forgive you. If you think, God will never forgive me for something, that's because you haven't done it. Maybe it's because you're identifying with the self, and the self doesn't feel like it should be forgiven, but you're not the self. You are the I am. If you separate into two parts and just see the image in your mind, self-reflect, see the image of the self, and let those thoughts just take off. Let it come out. Give yourself permission to vent. Give yourself permission to vent. Tell me how you really feel, and watch it just like, blah. Sometimes you might need to write it out. But when you're observing it, you're realizing it's talking, you're listening, you're not it. So who are you? You are the I am. You have the ability to heal yourself. And if you start to see this, and maybe you already have pendants, you can message me and we could talk about new ways to look at it or new ways to use them. A lot of times it's all done by mind. It's all done by the I am. And you just decide. This is what it's going to do. And it's that simple. I know it sounds too easy, but it's really that simple. I just tell these things what to do, and they do them. But don't do it like a lot of times we're in the I am mode, thinking like we're using the pendant to help the I am. But you need to use it because you're the one that's connected to that divine power. Use that as something to continuously help the self, the inner you. I mean, this is freaking huge. This is freaking huge. And it happens every so often. You'll constantly have to stay on top of it. Because once things get going good, you just kind of settle into it until the world does something to change. And then it's accept, reject. Do you accept this story? Yes, tell me more. Okay, story pans out. Do you accept this story? No, I don't. And then you don't pay any more attention to it. It will probably fade away. And a new story will pop up. A lot of times it's just like when we're bored. We're bored, and then some interesting thing, there's aliens flying all over New Jersey or whatever, and it gets your freaking attention. But even though it is not entertaining to the self, like, we have to focus on this and not these stories. I know it means I'll probably get less views because a lot of people just aren't at that level of separating from their self-image and being in that negativity. They're not open to it. But we're here to help, who we can help. Those that are ready to take the steps, those that are ready to take action. I mean, I see it. I see it mostly from the people that talk to me the most. that message me the most. It gives me updates on things. And then I'll give them some updates. I'll probably hear from her or give them some extra tips. I hear from her, and then things change. We got to change them from the inside out. Is there anything else we didn't cover in this? There's probably something. We'll come back to it and pick it up here later. But just consider that, like everything, the residual stuff. Like, make sure that programming's in there. Even if we clear out the traumas, start changing the way we signify things. Like Neo in the car. He's like, I have all these memories from my life. None of them happened. If you see it that way, if you see your past as a dream, because it's not here right now, and it's never going to be here again. So just treat it that way. Just treat it that way. It's a dream. Let it go. Give the instructions. You got to try things. Try out your power that you have. That's like what I do. Like if I'm using, I don't know, like something like this, something like a Illuminite accelerator, something like that. It's like spiritual connection stones. Like I'll hold that in my hand to bring it into my field when I go inward to pray to the higher consciousness. And it helps me keep focus on that and helps it hit harder. And usually I'll hear something, like I said, when I did it earlier, within a couple minutes, it brought up that verse, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I'm like, that's exactly what I was just that's it. Renewing of your mind. But you got to know what's going on in your mind. You have to reflect. You have to observe it. You got to be like, what am I thinking about? What are my thoughts doing? Who am I thinking about? Am I constantly replaying things in my head? Am I constantly playing fears in my head about I'm not going to have money? Like, stop, because you're going to make that happen. That's how this place works. So if the self has those patterns, we have to isolate the self. Then we have to have compassion for the self. And then take some sort of action using divine names or commands or whatever to help the self. Like you have to be the I am. You have to be the Father. Helping the version of you that is in your mind, that is the self, that is the image. As above, so below, as within, so without, all that stuff. All right, so you want to win the contest and get a pendant, which could be anything, just depends on what it is you need. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think in the description box below. I'm going to try and just not focus on freaking, it's almost like as soon as I decide not to do it, like more pop up. Like, are you sure? Are you sure? Oh, it's shaking over here. It's shaking over here. I'm like, well, if it does, it does. But bottom line is, let's just go on an outside limb and say like some big thing was going to finally happen. I want to be as ready and clear as I can. And I can't do that if all I'm doing is sitting there looking at it. Right? You got to fix what's going on in here. Got to fix what's going on here. And as soon as I did that, because with, and I made a different one, like now it might be another week and a half before I have that big supply of that sulfur quartz, but I still have some. I'm like, how can I make this better? Like if you really wanted to know what was going on under the hood, like oh, thank you, Lumen. Get to that in a sec. You really want to know what was going on under the hood. Like I made another one. Yes. So this is like the unedited what's going on under the hood formula. So it's got 3 different stones in it. Well, 4 maybe. It's got selenite. So the yellow is the sulfur. So that's the spice. That's the fire. Then it's got optical calcite, which optical calcite is almost as programmable as quartz, but it is like the lens of like examining yourself and seeing it. Then I put a couple little pieces of dravite in it, which is brown tourmaline. And that is like scraping the bottom of the barrel of whatever your sticky, icky, past pain crap is that you haven't got rid of, the residue. That's going to flush the residue. And then selenite just to keep it charged or whatever. I'm like, yeah, this thing will tell you what's going on. But when it happens, like when you use stuff like this, you have to expect it. You have to know that this is probably going to make the way I feel and think change. So remind me to notice it when it does. Because noticing what changes because you're interacting with energy tools is key in understanding what's going on. A lot of times people use stuff like Aegis and they're like, oh my God, if like all this stuff come out, it's like, that's what it was meant to do. Just like that crazy oil that we include little bottles of with the multi-pack thing with the small Aegis and the oil and all that, the hunter killer oil. It's designed to seek out all the things under the hood that are holding you back and flush them to the surface. That's what it's going to do. It's going to flush them to the surface. And it's the same thing as with this. This is the point Lumen was making. You have to embrace pain. Most people don't want to feel pain. So they shove parts of themselves down where they fester and create havoc. But understand what is pain in the body. What is pain? Pain is like a check engine light in your car. It tells you there's a problem. So if you're using the energy tools and it makes pain stuff come up like old memories, that is not a bad thing, okay? Because that was always there. It was buried down under your conscious awareness, creating havoc, creating more problems. I don't know how many times things like that have happened to me where I used something and it brought it to the surface and I'm like, oh shit, what is that? Where'd that come from? That was hiding this whole time, and then I fix it. But I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix it without knowing about it. You can't fix something if you don't know what's broken. So things like the Aegis and the whole, light a fire under your ass, volcano pan, stuff like that, or the oil, it's going to bring it up so that you see it. And then just understand we're using all sorts of different words for things, but it's part of you. Everything is part of you. Okay, so something screaming and hurting and complaining, that's a part of you that needs healed. Okay, and it wants to be seen. It's begging to be seen. That's why it's so irritated. You shoved it in a closet instead of dealing with it. Like imagine if you had a kid and it's like, mommy, I hurt myself. Like, I don't want to hear it. And she throws you in a closet. Like that's what we do with parts of ourselves. And we wonder why they become so toxic over time. So then you can use all the different types of tools and methods that we talk about. Like, okay, I see you. I'm in the reflection room talking to myself and I'm listening to you. You wanted to talk? I'm listening. Now I'm going to do something to help you. I'm going to use one of the divine names. I'm going to connect you to the energy of a pendant. I'm going to wear the pendant for you, but it's affecting the self. From you, I can use an Aegis. Maybe you got an Aegis originally because like you felt you needed protection and now you don't anymore. Well, it's still got the stones in there to purify negative energy, repurpose it. Say, okay, I want these stones to work on the self to transmute your negative feelings, your negative stuff out of you. Or use one of the luminite stuff that's, like the liquid crystal core. It's like a direct line to the light. That piece of you, the self's been trapped in darkness. So you're going to use that luminite, liquid crystal core or accelerator, or any of those in your mind, connect that energy, and you're going to channel it to the self image so that it can be healed, because you think you want to be connected to the light? that broken piece of the self needs it even more. And when you fix that, it comes to you. You fix the inner, it helps the outer. You fix the inner, it helps the outer. You fix enough, she gets free. Now there's two of you. Now you get your true reflection, because that's going to be your opposite. That's your true love. Now you're getting a lot closer. Now it's 2 against 1. And she can help. There's all sorts of stuff we can do, but we have to do it. The world doesn't want you to do it. The world wants you to suffer. The world wants you to stay distracted, take pills, drink things, numb the pain, numb the pain. We can fix the pain. It's not that hard. You simply have to do it. You have to realize that you are not just me. You're a whole colony of pieces of consciousness working together. And you got to fix the different parts. Okay? So that's all we got for right now. Let me know what you think in the description box below, and then your comment will enter you in the giveaway that we'll do probably tomorrow or the next day at the latest. If you want to get any of this custom stuff done, I still got more. I got a list. It's the back thing threw me off for a couple days. Got all sorts of these things. Like that's one of the big Luminite accelerators. Whew. Like one of these things, you'll feel that. Someone lost their Aegis, and they ordered another one after seeing the video the other day. So this is a one I just made. So yeah, the gold you got in there, that is that's the volcano core. So I took the small glass bottle that I usually put the liquid crystal stuff in, and I filled it with that sulfur quartz, and then made it solid with the resin, and then wrapped that thing. So yeah, that's the fire core. That's going to definitely, so you got the thing that's going to draw all the poison out, and then you've got the stones to transmute it, including the Benedict exorcism pendant, which that does it as well. So that's going to clear a whole bunch of stuff. So that one's going out tomorrow. I think I like the way these look a lot, because occasionally I'll still do straight stuff, especially like if I'm messing like with these small ones. But since I started doing the wire twists, they just look cooler. Plus, you got more coils in there. It's going to boost all that energy as well. But you can find all that stuff at clumencreations.etsy.com. You can find the music on our SoundCloud. Those links are in the description box below. It doesn't hurt you to like the video. It only helps other people. Because when people comment, when people like the video, that's how the algorithm works. If people aren't liking the video, other people aren't seeing it. So help us out, like the video, and Lumen says thank you. Okay, that's all we got for right now. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.
Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.